before you, and it's a domestic battery versus some other kind of battery. I'm sorry, I should...
We call it simple battery.
Simple battery,
yeah,
okay. That has some significance to you, does it not?
Absolutely, because, for example, I was talking about sentencing. In a simple battery, court supervision is available. Okay. So violence among strangers we view as a somewhat lesser evil than we do among family members. We don't want violence in someone's home. The other thing we do in sentencing on domestic battery is send the perpetrator to counseling. And it's domestic violence counseling. It's 26 weeks every week. And it's cognitive behavioral counseling because domestic violence is learned behavior. And what we need to do is to have people unlearn that behavior. And we've been pretty successful with that.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. So is that a mandatory piece of the sentencing then?
It will be as of January 1st.
That's really great to hear. We're going to go to break here in a minute, and when we come back, I'd like to speak to Sean McCumber if we could. Sean, I know that you do a lot of work with children. Yes. I know that you do a lot of work in DuPage County as guardian ad litem. So when we come back in a few minutes, I'd really like to talk to you about domestic violence in that context. So why don't we take a quick break? Please stay with us. We'll be right back, and we'll be talking to Sean McCumber about domestic violence in the context of a divorce case or from the perspective of the children. Thank you. Please come back soon.
Do you need guidance on a foreclosure or bankruptcy matter? Have you been hurt at work or suffered a personal injury? Do you need help filing for a divorce? The Lawyer Referral Service is a public service of the DuPage County Bar Association. Please call us from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday at 630-653-9109. Se habla español. To access the service online, log on to www.dcba.org and click on Find a Lawyer.
Don't take money. Don't take fame. Don't need a credit card to ride this train.
You're killing me, Lubeck. You gonna tell me you didn't see that stop sign back there?
Mr. Bellner, my high school driver's ed teacher, I thought you were...
I told you that if I ever found out you were driving like a bonehead, I'd haunt you. So, boo and whatnot. 10 and 2, son.
What's the big deal anyway? I mean, nobody was even near that intersection.
That one of those optional stop signs? Did it say stop and then in parentheses, only when Lubeck deems it so?
No.
Bonehead. Looks like I'm gonna have to ride shotgun for a while. Where are we headed?
Visit my sister downstate.
Ooh, long trip. Good thing I brought some tunes. You do like banjo music, don't you, Lubeck? We gotta make another pit stop here.
I thought you were a ghost.
Doesn't work that way.
Hello and welcome back to Legal Action. I'm Susan Alvarado, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today in this, the third in a series of 3 programs on domestic violence. Now I'd like to turn to Sean McCumber. Sean, thank you very much for being with us this evening. Sean, I know that you do a lot of work in the DuPage County Courthouse as guardian ad litem. Could you explain, first of all, to our viewers what that means?
Well, a guardian ad litem is an attorney who's appointed to essentially stand in the place of the best interest of the minor child in divorce actions, paternity actions, domestic violence matters that don't involve criminal cases, even adoption court, probate. They basically stand in and they can do things that the court can't do, like go out into the real world, meet the people that have the facts at hand, bring those to the attention of the court, and tell the court what's in the child's best interest.
Okay, so you are an attorney, let's get that straight, yes. But you're not acting as the children's attorney, you're acting more as the eyes and ears of the court.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay, so typically, I think I heard you say then, typically you would be appointed by Judge Sexton or somebody else to represent the best interests of the children in a divorce case. Can you explain what a paternity case is quickly?
When parties aren't married and they have children together, they have to address the same issues, custody, child support, visitation, that you would with married couples. Obviously, there's no property issues and no maintenance issues or support,
right.
but you still have to address those issues. So in a paternity case, that would be...
Right. There's no spousal support, but
No.
even if you've never married, you have children together, there still are issues of child support.
There
yes?
are.
Right.
Some
okay.
people, a one night together could result in 18 years of payments.
Right. That's an important point to remember. So, all right. So now, tell us, what are you seeing in terms of trends? As guardian ad litem, are you seeing, what kinds of domestic violence issues are you seeing?
A lot of it has gone into what Judge Sexton has said with cyber stalking, text messages to the point of every 5 seconds there's a text message, emailing incessantly, and sometimes those, one perspective from the parent who has the kids is you're harassing me. From the parent who doesn't have the kids, you're not letting me see my kids, you're not letting me talk to my kids, and for some reason somebody ends up in order protection, in trying to get an order protection.
Okay. One question I have, because Judge Sexton actually touched on this in our first program, I think, in this series, and that is, what happens when somebody files a request or a petition for an order of protection and there's a divorce case going on? Is that looked at differently?
Absolutely. I've noticed the judges do give that a special level of scrutiny, whether or not they're going to attempt to use this order of protection to gain advantage in a custody trial, or whether or not it truly is an emergency domestic violence situation that requires immediate court intervention. The question turns on whether or not there's been proper notice to the other side, because in an emergency situation, you're not giving notice to the other side, you're getting an order of protection and then giving them notice that they can't do something.
Right. Right.
So that it is given extra scrutiny.
Well, you know, Judge Sexton, how about that? What happens when a case comes before you on a petition for an order of protection and there is an active divorce case going on? Do you look at that differently?
I do, and the petitioner is required to disclose that there is a divorce case pending on the petition for order of protection. One of the things we have to make sure is that they're not using this, as we call it, an end run to get possession of the apartment or the home or temporary possession of the children in a fashion that would not be fair to the other side. Usually people in divorces are represented by counsel, and a lot of times people will come in without a lawyer and we'll say, well, where's your lawyer? Oh, you know, he couldn't be here today. So those are the kinds of things that are red flags to us, that this may not be as legitimate.
Right.
But there are legitimate emergency orders of protection where a divorce case is pending.
Right.
And we will enter it in that. But then it doesn't stay with us for the plenary order hearing. That is shipped back to the divorce judge.
Right, in the same building, just
in the same building,
different floor.
Right.
How about that, Tom? How about when you're handling a divorce case and a client comes to you with allegations of some kind of domestic violence? I mean, how often? What would you do? I mean, do you often end up seeking orders of protection?
Not often, but it happens. Sometimes, usually right in the beginning of the case, when temperatures are high and the case has just been filed and people are upset at the prospect of divorcing, sometimes there's threats of violence or there may actually be violence, and if that's the case, we go over to the courthouse and we get an order of protection.
Right.
Then the other side becomes aware of that, and there's a hearing in front of the divorce judge as to whether or not there's going to be an order of protection, and if there is, what the remedies are going to be. There's a lot of remedies that are available in an order of protection.
Right. And now coming back to Sean, okay, Sean, so now we're in a divorce case, and you've got one parent, your guardian ad litem, you are the guardian ad litem. You've got Tom and his client filing for an emergency order of protection. What kind of things do you look at in that context?
And the case is already filed, and they're now coming in on an order of protection, and I'm already in the case
You're
as
in
a
the
guardian.
case as the guardian.
Well, I'm going to want to talk to the kid first and foremost, because they're going to be the most informative to me. And everyone looks at a kid and says, they don't know what they're talking about. They're pretty good observers, and they don't have the same guards that we do, and they'll say something that someone else might disregard, that's my job to catch and listen to it and say, hold on a second, this is what really happened. At that point, the other thing to think at with an attorney like Tom Ells on the case, he's going to call me on that issue, I think, before he runs into court and say, what do you think?
Right, right. Okay, so granted, I don't want anyone